think we can start. Welcome to our book launch of Master Your Thesis from Caroline Dale. I'm Willem Kraus. I'm the founder and MD of Knowledge Resources. For those of you who don't know us, we do three things. Firstly, we publish books like this, about 15 to 20 per annum, in the business environment and related areas. So we're an independent niche publisher, and then a large part of our business is conferences and training workshops and so on that we run, as well as we do have online communities, and in addition to that, we have our library, KR Library, that we offer on the online to subscribers. So if you want more information, go to our website, kr.co.za. So without further ado, we're very, very excited to share with you tonight our latest title. There it is, hot off the press, just being unpacked. We received our first copies today, and we're very excited. You know, there are 100,000 of students busy with a master's or a thesis or a PhD thesis in Southern Africa. And research shows that there's a tremendous, not only dropout rate, but a slow completion rate as well. So if we can assist those students to, as Caroline calls it, to get their lives back, then we've achieved our purpose in that respect. So without further ado, I'm going to, well, firstly, let me tell you how we're going to run this show tonight. I'm going to introduce Caroline, and then she's going to talk about the book, how the book came about, a bit more about the content and so on. Then you are very welcome, nice Raymond. Then you are very welcome to pose questions or make a comment in the chat room or even the Q&A option. We'll take that questions, and Caroline, you can tap her brain tonight. In addition to that, we will basically complete this session around 6 o'clock at the latest. So we've contracted with you within an hour with all of you. So without further ado, let me introduce Caroline to you. For those of you who don't know, many of you I saw here in the chat room knows her well. So she's the founder and CEO of the Thesis Coach. Some of her qualifications, I'm not going to list all of them, but she's got a BA Honours Psychology from UNISA, a BA Psychology Cum Laude from UNISA as well. Then amongst others, an MPhil Management Coaching from the University of Stellenbosch Business School, and she received a cum laude for her thesis. Caroline has over 1,000 hours coaching experience, and since 2018, she has been an academic coach, specifically a thesis coach, and 90% of the students she has coached have graduated. Quite a number, high number of percentage have done that with a distinction. Good evening, Caroline. Welcome and congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Wilhelm, and hello to everybody. I just would like to start off by saying thank you to you and your team at Knowledge Resources, specifically Sia, Tina, Amy, and Katie, who are the people that I've in fact been talking to. They have really made me feel part of your team and have given me lots of rope. So thank you to your crowd, Wilhelm. Secondly, thank you to everybody that's out there. I know what it's like to go online for a webinar or any kind of Zoom meeting at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and sometimes it's very daunting. So thanks for making the time, and thanks for sharing this occasion with me. I just want to start off by saying that when I finished matric, I went straight to Wits University, very proud of the fact that I'd passed matric and very proud of the fact that I had a university entrance. And I registered to study teaching. Anyway, what happened to me was I didn't get through that teaching degree. I bailed out of it, I think 6 months into it. Can't really remember the reasons why. Maybe it was just too hard. Maybe I just realized I didn't want to be a teacher. I'm not really sure. And then, believe it or not, I launched straight into a BCom accounting degree. I don't know how teaching lent itself to accounting, but somehow that's what happened. And I was told categorically by my first lecturer that if any of us had achieved over 80% in our matric finals for accounting, we needn't attend the first 6 weeks of lectures. Anyway, the rebel in me didn't attend the first 6 months of lectures. So I failed horribly in my first year of a BCom and bailed out of that as well. So just to let you know that I understand what the feeling of failure is all about when it comes to tertiary qualifications. I procrastinated. I had no real goals in sight. I probably didn't really know what I wanted to do. So that's the excuse that I give myself. But I want to fast forward now to 40 years later, which is where we find ourselves today. And just say this is indeed a celebration. I've wanted to write a book for probably the past 10 years, and it has now finally come to light. So I'm very grateful that I'm sitting here presenting to you this afternoon. One of the question I'm most often asked is, why are you here? How did the thesis coach come about? What is that all about? And my intention in the next 10 to 15 minutes is to give you a brief synopsis of my career to date and how the thesis coach was in fact formed, just so that you understand where I've come from and what I've done. I know that one of the buzzwords that's been hanging around for some time is, what is your purpose? Why are you on this earth? What are you intended to do? And I want to use that word purpose and just the thought about that as the theme for running through this short presentation of mine. And I think the first thing is that behind every person is their own unique story. And that story and their experiences and everything that they do up till a certain point is what in fact guides them to where they end up and what their purpose actually is. And just to start this process, I'm going to quote for you from a book that I read, an autobiography, some years ago when I myself was thinking, what am I doing? You know, I started off with this teaching, I went into accounting, done many things since then, and what am I actually doing here? And I read this quote from Michael J. Fox in his autobiography, and he says this. He says, "The fact remains, this is my life. This is not a role I'm playing. My participation is uniquely informed by my experience, and I happen to possess this most rare and useful currency, and I've found a wonderful way to spend it." And I really enjoy reading those words because it makes me feel like this is, everybody's life is unique and all our experiences are unique, and that's where we end up ultimately. So after my kind of endeavors at Wits University, I realized it was time for me to get out and earn my own money and start my own life. So at the age of 19, I left home and I went into my first job. So I want us to have a look briefly at my career as it spans over the last 40 years. And I want to look at it in 5 distinct and significant stops. And I call them stops because the way I see it is that I stopped at those places and I shared my life and I had experiences in those places. So my first significant stop was at Ed Hearn Rudolph, a stockbroker. And I was specifically involved in IT. So it was teaching to accounting to information technology. And what happened there was that I learned probably the biggest lesson of my life. And that was what it entails to have a very strong work ethic. I don't know if anybody out there knows what it feels like to belong to the fraternity of stockbrokers, but it is hectic is what I can say. And they taught me what it feels like to work very long hours all night to produce the goods, to get things out, to market themselves, to make money. It was a really very strong work ethic that I learned while I was there. And that is significant for me because it taught me at the time, while I was there, it taught me in the information technology field, how to be very precise, how to keep systems alive, how to keep systems going, because I had to keep their computer systems running each and every single day. So as much as it taught me some bad habits as well, which it did, it taught me a lot of good habits. So for me, that is my first stop: systems, precision, programming, that kind of thing. Second significant stop was the JSE themselves. What happened there was I joined them as a contractor in their IT business analysis division. And it didn't take me long to figure out that there was no alignment between IT and the business processes. So I made a recommendation to the executive committee of the JSE and said, look, we need to have something that fills the gap in between these two processes that take place in the stock exchange. So they gave me the go-ahead to get the EPO, Enterprise Projects Office, up and running. And when I left there in the year 2000, we had 110 strong projects, all that were given the green light by the executive committee. So I had a very large team working with me there. And it was during that time. So my takeaways from there were project management. I got involved in the international project systems. I got a couple of qualifications from them, and I did many hours in project management. So I learned about business analysis. I learned about systems, once again about processing. So you can kind of see where this is going. My experience in these two worlds of IT were a lot about systems and project management. My third significant stop was when I jumped off the corporate ladder completely out into the world, into an abyss. I decided to follow my husband in his career. And also at that time, I had my first daughter, and it gave me the opportunity to jump out of corporate and spend some time with my children. And I think as a postgraduate student myself, and having spent a lot of time in the world of career and so on, I was very fortunate to have this opportunity to share some of my life with my children and not be busy all the time. But in that time too, I needed to do something with myself that didn't cause me to stagnate. So I got involved in a number of entrepreneurial endeavors. And I won't go through them all, but kind of from retail into a guest house, into real estate business, into some agricultural projects. So I was involved in a number of entrepreneurial escapades, and all of them again taught me about what it means to go out in the world and live in that space. Monitor what you're doing every day, monitor your finances, measure what you're doing, stock control, that kind of thing. So again, that was very much part of my entire makeup. Fourth stop, went back to university. So I decided again that my brain was going a bit fuzzy, and I needed to get involved in some kind of learning and some kind of academic. So I went back to university. That was in 2012. And I registered for an undergraduate psychology degree. Then I did an honors degree. Those two things took me about 6 years. And then I did another postgraduate qualification through Stellenbosch University. And so you can see the pattern. I was now needing to kind of fill the hole, I think, of what happened to me when I left school, that I needed to fill this academic hole, and I needed to build some credibility in terms of where I thought I was going, which at that stage I didn't really know. I had some ideas, but I also didn't really know. And the final big cherry on the top of that cake was the Master's in Philosophy in Executive Coaching at the Stellenbosch Business School. That was an experience of note for me. And again, I have a number of takeaways out of that. So the first one is that I had this idea when I started the program that doing this degree was going to be a means to an end, and that I would walk out of there, this grand executive coach with this fantastic practice, and all things were going to fall into place. And it was a very short time before I figured out that that wasn't actually going to happen, that in fact, this was now a place of learning, and it was going to be hard work. I suffered in the first year with all the things that students suffer from. I felt the sense of fear. What if I failed again? I felt the sense of being an imposter. my colleagues and those around me, it felt to me like they all had more experience in the world than I did. They were from HR, they were electronic people, they were business people, some of them were already executive coaches. So I felt a little bit out of my depth, but slowly but surely I began to realize that doing a master's degree is about personal and professional development. That is what it's all about. So through the process of learning the different theories and models and engaging with the lecturers and the professors and the faculty at the USB, really tended towards a lot of learning during that first year. Also during that year, we were required to design and create our own coaching model. And that in the beginning was rather difficult to comprehend because I was trying to be very clever about pulling a bunch of other people's very clever theories together and making it my own. And it took me a while to realize that actually this coaching model was in fact about me. And what I needed to do with it was to, yes, underpin it by the clever guys out there, those that resonated with me, and then build my own coaching model. And I'll tell you in a minute about how the Dale method came about. The third thing that happened to me at the USB was I passed my first year, not with screaming great colors, but I did well enough to get through, and reveling in this achievement of having made it through the final professional assessment at the USB, I kind of let it all sink in for a while and didn't do much work on my thesis. And that was a problem. So I got round to having to present my thesis idea to 3 members of the faculty and my supervisor. And I was very enamored by my whole process and my whole presentation. And they all sat looking at me after that presentation and they were like, what are you actually trying to do? We have no idea. It turned out that I didn't have very much of an idea myself. So the beginning part of the thesis was really hard to pull together. Eventually it came together, it evolved. That's what happens. One's got to stick at it. You've got to just keep sticking at it. And eventually I had a topic and I had something that people were comfortable with and something that my supervisor was comfortable with. So we went ahead. The next problem I had during the course of that year was what I call analysis paralysis. I got to the stage where I'd gathered all my data, I'd pulled it all in, I'd analyzed it all, and I had all this wonderful information, and all of a sudden it felt worthless. It was, what is this all about? Who cares? Nobody's going to be interested. I've wasted my time. I've wasted everybody else's time. I don't know how to put this down on paper. And I went into about a 3-day downward cycle of feeling absolutely anxious and overwhelmed by what I still needed to do. Anyway, I got out of that hole, fortunately, but what that made me realize, and this was the big takeaway from that process, was that I needed help. And that was not my supervisor's job. She was helping me with the content. She was helping me think through the process of actually delivering this thesis in terms of the right research methodologies. But I needed help just venting with somebody and talking to them about how I was feeling and what I needed to do next to crawl out of the hole. So that leads me then to the 5th stop. So this was the culmination of my career to date, and that was the formation of the thesis coach. And one would ask themselves, what is that actually? And the idea was that I support students through coaching, mentoring them, either through the academic part of their program or more specifically through the thesis part of their program. Because that is for me where the wheels actually came off. So I started the business in 2018 after my graduation in 2017. And right at the beginning, I had my coaching model that I designed right up front doing my master's started to evolve into something that looked like not a linear process, but a cyclical process that I could bring people in and help them from wherever they were at. So I took a bunch of psychological theories and coaching theories, those that I really felt were something that I could work with. And on the basis of all those things, I pulled them all together and I designed the thing, this so-called thing, for want of a better word, the Dale method. And there was a little bit of madness in that thought, because I was hoping that when people saw the Dale method, they would think Dale Carnegie, and so it would all sound bigger and better than it was. Anyway, as it turns out, the Dale method is stuck, and it's growing and it's evolving. I do an awful amount of research. I'm forever reading up on new stuff about everything that has to do with how do we keep ourselves going? How do we get a grip and keep ourselves motivated and confident to keep going? Obviously, when I started the Thesis Coach, one of the first things I had to do was get into some marketing and develop some kind of social media. So I started a website, and I started, and I got myself engaged in most of the social media channels that are out there. And I had to start writing content now. So I was sending out a monthly newsletter. I was writing blogs. I was writing articles. I wrote a number of articles a few years ago for the South African Coaching magazine. And I was putting these articles out onto the web and out into the space of my student clients. And it felt that all of these things that I was doing needed to find their own voice. They needed to be put somewhere so that they could gather a larger audience. And this is what has happened. And this is how the launch of this book happened. This is where the book comes from. So the book comes from, let me appeal to the much larger audience of whoever's out there, these 100,000 students that Wilhelm is talking about. Not everybody has either the time or the wherewithal or the resources to engage one-on-one with a full-time coach. So let me take what I know and put it on paper and get it out there so that people can learn. So that's where the book is, what the book is all about. And again, like I say, it's about the process. It's about how do we get through this year? How do we get control? How do we gain focus? What precision do we need? What processes do we follow? So I have to tell you that as well, working with clients, I've obviously learned a lot. So I've learned a lot about their problems. I've learned a lot about their challenges, and they all come in with very similar themes. There's always that procrastination monkey. There's always this fear of failure. There's often this complete feeling of overwhelm. What are we going to do next? How do I stay focused? How do I manage my time? What do I do? So very much the themes are similar, yet everybody also is unique. So they also come in with their different angles of how they're trying to deal with all of these problems. So the Master Your Thesis, Proven Strategies and Methods. It's time to get your life back. The time to get your life back came from one of my students who just said, I need to get my life back. I can't anymore. I'm tired of doing this. And that's where that sort of slogan comes from. But the book, so I say, the book is a culmination of all the problems and the solutions that students are facing. And I'm doing the research constantly on these problems and how to best really help the students face them. So when it comes down to psychological barriers, how do we face those things? How do we try and balance our life and our study work? I could take you through some points of what I hope the book takes away or gives you to take away. But I think at this stage, I've been talking a little bit too much. I want to sort of round off here and say, so from IT, to project management, to corporate senior management, to systems and analysis work, entrepreneurial endeavors, psychology, management coaching, I kind of feel like I've come this full circle. And I've finally got to a space in my life where I feel this is my true vocation. I love working with students. I love to watch them get the sense of achievement and confidence and control and focus. I have a funny little story to tell you. I was with my dentist recently, and she was going to do a PhD in root canal. And she said to me, Caroline, I just have to ask you, what on earth are you doing here? How do you deal with these people who are struggling so hard every single day, and all the angst and all the anxiety? And I just took one look at her and I said to her, look, you asked me that, but how do you look into 7 different people's mouths every day? I can't go there. So it just goes to show that we're all doing different things for different reasons. And it's what inspires us. It's what gives us purpose. It's what makes us get out of bed in the morning and just keep going. So the takeaway message for those out there on their academic program is this: it is impossible to attribute, and for me, it's impossible to attribute this kind of awakening of my true vocation based on any specific insight or any specific breakthrough. I didn't just burst out of a cocoon and the thesis coach just happened. It comes down to reflecting on the successes and failures over the year, living a strong work ethic, making sacrifices, and showing up every single day. And I do believe that the insights and learnings that are included, or including the knowledge and experience that I've produced in the book, will serve as a motivator to clients and a means for them to acknowledge the necessity of pursuing their own postgraduate goals. So read the book, learn the lessons, and graduate. A celebration. I was told that today is a celebration. I have to show my glass. Sorry, my hands are shaking because I am somewhat nervous. But this book is a gift to myself. It is a gift to my supporters and my family, and obviously all my clients. And more importantly, it's a gift to you out there who are struggling to finish your degrees. And if any of you, as the reader, finds just one small thing in the book to keep you going and help you to get to that graduation, then I feel my work is done. So thank you for listening.
Great, thank you, Caroline. Before we, that was quite an interesting journey that you shared with us, and we really appreciate that. Before we get to some questions and so on, I thought I'll share with you, with the delegates, we've had fantastic endorsements for the book from various people, amongst others, some of the top academics in the country. For instance, Professor Adri Drotsky, who's the director of the School of Management at UJ. She says, as a supervisor and mentor of many postgraduate students, I found this book to be very practical and focused on the key aspects that you will come across in your journey of developing a thesis. Professor Theo Veldsman, I mean, I know he's supervised probably in the hundreds of master students. He says, following Caroline Dale's method will be worth your while in significantly enhancing your chances of not only reaching your destination successfully, but also in one piece personally. And somebody, a leader in our in commerce industry, Dr. Shirley Zinn, is also an extraordinary professor at various universities and director of many boards. She says this book is an engaging, compelling must-read for anyone involved in writing research proposals and thesis writing. It's more than an indispensable step-by-step guide. So that's just a little extract. There are really dozens of these endorsements. So, Caroline, before I get to specific questions, and I want to invite the audience also to ask ask questions and so on. Oh, wait a minute. Here is Sarah. Let me quickly answer Sarah. Sarah, you go to the link will be on the Katie or Tina will post a link right away, and then you can go there and obtain the book there. And by the way, it's at the moment at 15% discount. I saw some of the delegates already. I can see on my screen coming through orders on our website. Okay, Caroline, what do you think is what do you suggest is the one most important thing that a prospective or a present master's or PhD student should pay attention to when it comes to completing their thesis and successfully completing it?
Look, I have to say that it's so hard to just answer that with one thing, Wilhelm. The first thing is that you have to be extremely inspired by your topic choice. So the topic choice that you choose for yourself has to be something that keeps you very energized, because the reality is you have to hold this thing like a baby. You have to nurture it, you have to nourish it, you have to look after it every single day. So you've got to be inspired by the topic choice. And the other thing is, and also the topic choice has to align. It has to align to your academic aspirations, your personal aspirations, your professional aspirations. Some people are writing a thesis in an attempt to help their organizations. Others are doing it for their own personal benefit. Must align to all those things that are important to you. And then secondly, and not secondly only, is to get control, because it's the overwhelm that kills you. You need to get control of the process, and that is not too hard to do. So those are the two things for me: topic choice and get control. I have to add one other thing here, sorry, and that is your supervisor. Please know that your supervisor is key. They are very important to the process, and you've got to really nurture that relationship as well. So for me, those are three key things.
Yeah, and when I went through the book, when you submitted the manuscript, the one thing that I thought also was very important is the way that you dealt with that relationship and how important it is, and the responsibility on the student, so to speak, on getting that, managing that relationship as well, and ensure that you know and understand the various expectations. Now, what I also found very important is the whole concept of project management, applying project management principles. And then what is quite unique to this specific book is the psychological challenges that you cover there.
Yeah, you see, the interesting thing, like I mentioned to you, you know, psychological challenges are often very difficult to overcome, because they are things that people feel, and as much as you say to them, well, stop feeling like that, that doesn't help. It's about taking those challenges that are standing in your way and owning them, almost being aware that they're there, taking ownership of them, figuring out how best to kind of brush them aside, put them in a box and say, you sit over there. We talk about a procrastination monkey. And if any of you are interested, go and watch Tim Urban's TED talk on procrastination and a thesis. Take the monkey and put it in a box and leave it there for an hour while you get on with your work. So it's a hard thing to overcome. And often the problems and the challenges that people face are that they come from, they come from areas that are not untrue. Do you know what I mean? I can't do this. I don't know how to do it. I'm not clever enough. So it's about taking those limiting assumptions and saying, but why are you saying that? Let's take a look back and see what you have achieved up till now. Let's have a look. You can't do a postgraduate degree if you didn't do an undergraduate one. So how did you do there? Oh, no, I cum laude that. And so how did you get that right? So just do a discrepancy test as to why they're thinking that now and what happened in the past. So it's a true problem for most people. And I find that often that's where I start with students, is the psychological challenges.
So the best way for me to describe the Dale method is to say that it's a holistic view. So many of the books that deals with thesis writing and so on deals with that technical side. Spend chapters on defining your research problem and literature research and formulating a hypothesis and so on and so on. On the technical side of it. Here we have a book that's very holistic in the sense that it deals not only, as I said, with project management, the writing and editing, psychological challenges and so on, but also well-being. And then what do you do when you achieve and you're successful? I mean, I really found that as a strength. Caroline, we've got a couple of questions here which we need to quickly handle. So Raymond says, on qualitative methodology, here we get into the technical stuff. How does one navigate the nerves when collecting data through interviews and overcome the challenge of being overpowered by your participants? You know, you might encounter participants who think they know it all. What's your take on mental health issues on postgraduate students? Read the book, Raymond.
Raymond, qualitative methodology. That's a good question. It's one I've never actually been faced with, to be honest. I know that when people are doing qualitative interviews, they often go in, and I'm sure you're doing this because I know you're doing a PhD, that you go in with a series of questions. And I think the best way to do it is to try and navigate those questions as far as possible. So don't make it too open and too broad. It's also difficult when it's qualitative because that's the whole point. But being overpowered by your participants, I'm guessing that it's about trying to navigate, like I say, those questions and bringing them back to the core of what you're actually asking them. I don't know if that helps you. The other suggestion potentially is to let it go, but record, and I'm sure you're doing that as well, is to record those interviews and then, basically dump the stuff that you don't need. I think maybe that's the idea. My take on mental health issues on postgraduate students is, look, there are lots of struggles. And again, it comes down to taking those feelings that you've got, which are there, and, owning them and trying to manage them and becoming aware of them. The other thing is to not forget, and this is what students do all the time, they forget to look after themselves. So they forget to get into a proper routine. They forget about nutrition. They forget about getting some vitamin C every day. They seem to be so stuck at their desks that they wake up 3 weeks later and they can't move their shoulders and they can't move their backs, and now they're in pain. One's got to remember that part of the routine is to incorporate definitely some good practices and good routines, so that you're getting the best of everything, so that your brain is ready to work. And sleep. I mean, sleep is a huge subject that I talk about with people all the time. They just don't sleep enough. So it is a problem, and they struggle. So that's the truth.
Okay. A link to that, Valessa says, how does one overcome the stress? The stress that comes with being stuck. She says, it is overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. And I think the only answer that I have there is to unpack it. So you've got to look at this big picture of overwhelm, and you've got to say, okay, let me start at the beginning. Let's do this one step at a time. And this is where I come down to what I call the power of planning. And I know some students are going to sit there and go, oh, please, for goodness sake, don't talk to me about planning. I don't need to know about planning. That's just a lot of nonsense. I don't have time for it. But the reality of planning is that it's powerful. And if you take the overwhelm that you're feeling now and you start putting it into bite-sized chunks of what you can actually deal with, it will remove the overwhelm and give you some kind of confidence to move forward. Trust me on that. So just unpack it. Unpack what you're feeling, unpack what you're trying to achieve, and put it down into bite-sized chunks of what you can actually deal with every day. And be explicit, very explicit. I need to do this and I need to do that.
Okay, thank you. Moses asked a very important question, is this: how can one be motivated to start with a research proposal, seeing that different universities use different templates and approaches?
Yeah, that's a good question, Moses. But I think the thing is that in my experience, the different universities definitely use different templates and different approaches. But the point is they have one. So go out and find what it is that they want. I mean, one of the first questions I ask any student that comes to me is, when do you have to submit? And, my standard answer is, oh, at the end of the year. And I'm like, what is the end of the year? Is it the 31st of December, the end of November, the end of October? Oh, no, they're not sure. And I'm saying, well, there's 3 months in that. 3 months is time. So find out exactly what the requirements are. And I'm certainly saying that, yes, I've got different people with different research proposal problems. There is a generic form for a research proposal, but find out what your university wants. Make an effort. Go there if you have to. Find out exactly what their requirement is and follow their requirement. I don't know if that answers your question, Moses.
Okay. Here's a bit of a more technical question from Nontobeko. How old is research considered to be not publishable? anymore?
Sorry, Wilhelm, repeat that question.
How old is research considered to be not publishable anymore?
I have no idea. What I do know, though, not publishable anymore. What I do know is when you're trying to write a literature review, you know, you're encouraged to find fresh stuff within the last 5 years. And it's important to, even though you might be looking at theories from that were created in 1960, yes, get those theories, but then find out what others have been writing about them more recently. So I'm not sure how to answer that question about how old it is before it's published. Don't know.
Yeah, I'm also not. That depends on the university also and the guidelines they give you. I mean, I'm not sure but whether it's about Ntombeko's own research or research that he comes across or she comes across in the literature review. Okay.
I can just say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I can just say one more thing there. If it is about your own research, and if you're wondering if you can still publish an article from your own research, the best thing to do is to go back to your supervisor. And if you can't find that person, then go back to your university and speak to somebody there, because somebody will help you. Somebody will tell you what value is in publishing your research if it was done, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever. So I would definitely engage with the university that you got your degree at.
Okay. Loiselo asks here, what is the best approach to start a thesis at your master's level?
Your best approach is to be proactive. You know, be as proactive as possible. When you do the academic part of your year already, whatever you're learning in that year, whether you're doing an MBA or whether you're doing an MPhil, you get tasks to do, you get assignments to do, you get things that you need to do. As you're working through that stuff, start figuring out what it is that's inspiring you enough that you feel you could do some research work on. So I'd be proactive, and I'd absolutely get my bum into that chair the year before. So if you know your thesis is due at the end of 2023, get going at the end of 2022 and start already figuring out what it is that you want to do. So for me, it's about be proactive.
Okay, but related to that, Amy is asking, what is your advice for a student who has missed the deadline and has fallen behind, but now is trying to get back on track?
Great question. The first thing to do there is to again check with the university, check if you're in trouble and what the consequences of missing a deadline actually means. So again, I have students that come to me and they're in a flurry because they haven't spoken to their supervisor for 6 months and they don't know what to do. And my straightforward advice is engage with your supervisor, but right now, don't wait anymore. You know, find out what it is that needs to happen. So the first thing is check the deadline that you've missed and what that actually means. Does it mean that you can't go on? Does it mean that you can't graduate this year? Does it mean it costs you more money? Whatever it means, find out firstly. And when you found out, you're working from a position of power. You're in control because you know now what you need to do. So if the university says it's fine, don't worry that you've missed the deadline. You tell us when you can pick this up again. And if they say you've got 3 weeks to pick this up and run with it, you've got to decide whether that's realistic in your own time frame. So get back on track, but understand what the consequences of missing the deadline were in the first place.
Thank you. Let me see whether there are any more questions here. Okay, that's Amy's question has been answered. Come again?
I see a comment there from Melvi. I worked with Melvi some years ago doing a PhD, and she just says here that she endorses the planning because it sounds simple, but I reminded her of something, and it was such a real thing. And again, you have to read the book, but if you know what the NQF level is, figure that out when you start your thesis. Figure out how much time the notional hours are that they specifically allocate to your degree, and then work out how many hours you actually need to do every day. That's an eye-opener. So the idea is to get this bird's eye view, get a helicopter view of the whole year. But students try so hard to fit everything in. They want to do everything now. They want to quickly finish this literature review, but it's not like that. You have to spread it out and figure out how much time you've got to put in each day. And that's where the trick is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, related to that now, Caroline, I suppose that one of the big issues for students, especially those who's left university in a full-time study, is to juggle all the priorities of work and family and maybe kids already and so on and so on, and try and make everything work for them on that respect.
You know, again, that's a real problem. But there's only one thing I can say here, and that is that something's got to give. And I know so many who try and fit a thesis or a master's degree on top of their existing lives. And it doesn't happen like that. It's like me saying, and I did this, by the way, I said when I had both my daughters, they're both on the screen, by the way, hello girls, I thought they could just fit into my life. It doesn't work like that. Something's got to give. You've got to give up something. So one of the things that I do tackle is sacrifices. What sacrifices are you willing to make? And there've got to be some. And think practically about how you make more time for yourselves. And I know we all think we don't have time, but the truth is we have to find the time. If this is your top priority value for this year, make the time. Sacrifice things that you can sacrifice. I mean, you can't sacrifice your children, you can't sacrifice your health or your spouse. I know that. But what you can do is maybe bring in help. You know, maybe say to a friend, can you deliver my children to school 3 days this week? Can hubby maybe fill the lunch boxes? I don't know, whatever it looks like. Think of some practical things that are going to give you some more time and stop trying to do everything. You can't. It's as simple as that. You've got to, something's got to give, you've got to give something up.
Yeah. Caroline, we've now the whole afternoon, or most of the afternoon, we spent on the perspective of the student. Let's talk about the supervisor for a second. What's your advice, apart from to them to assist their students to get through this whole process, apart from giving quickly feedback? What is there anything else that jumps to mind?
What, for the supervisor, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, supervisors are all different. I don't experience supervisors myself. I only experience the students' relationships with their supervisors or lack of relationships. So it's difficult for me to speak to the supervisor per se. They all have a different, they all have different lives. Some of them are super, super busy. Some of them are creating their own publications and working and supervising at the same time. Some of them are retired and they've got all the time in the world to supervise. So I'm guessing for me, it's more about the availability and accessibility, because often I find that the students are complaining that the supervisors are not accessible. They're not necessarily always available. They don't answer them on time. And again, this is where you have to recognize that they are also people and they also have lives, and you really need to manage the expectations. And they are all very, very different. So yeah, for me, it's about the accessibility. And the one thing I want to say to students is that I know how hard it is to receive feedback from a supervisor. And sometimes it can be really curt, like, this doesn't make any sense. So you've sent them 3 paragraphs of something, they say this makes no sense, and you're like, well, hello, what does that mean? So, and then other times you get feedback, which is just lots of red lines and lots of, you can't do this and you shouldn't do that, and this is a sin in research and blah, 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 you know, they're all different. But the thing to do is remember that you're in a space of learning. Nobody expected you to jump in and become a researcher overnight and create this fantastic thesis. And I think often students are afraid to engage with their supervisors because they want to be perfect. They want to show the perfect title. They want to show the perfect aims and objectives. and it's not going to work like that. You are in a stage of learning, so they will give you feedback and guide you on that path. As far as giving the supervisors anything, I think more or less it's just really, like I say, about accessibility.
Just one or two things. As I think Suleiman asked where you can get the book. Tina will send that information to you, and welcome to you as well. Right. Ronel asks if in your experience of others and or your own thesis, what has been the most challenging part of the thesis? What would be your specific advice for that section, or that process, that step or so?
There were two hard parts for me. The first was the literature review, and the second was writing down the analysis. I think just to sit with the literature review, which is often a problem, my advice on the literature review is simple. Tackle one article at a time. Put together some kind of Excel spreadsheet and keep a record of each article that you write, that you read. If you read an article, don't study it necessarily. Look at the abstract, look at the conclusion, maybe look at the methodology, glance over it, see that it resonates with you, and store it for reading at some other time. So build your literature review in a very organized fashion instead of reading articles and racing through them and trying to study them. I had a student one year who summarized every single article she read. I was like, oh no, you have to be very concise and very focused and prioritized on what you're reading. And there's a nice way to build a literature review if you just follow a very logical path of one thing at a time. Are we okay? I don't know if that helps you. The analysis part of it, I love doing the analysis and generating themes. I enjoyed all of that, but writing it on paper, that was particularly hard for me. Yeah, it just really got round to get your head in the game and figure it out and put all your little notes and really pull it together. Yeah, sorry.
I suppose for those who have a curious mind, to stay focused also, not getting diverted too often in a literature review, and to know when to stop.
Absolutely. Stop reading at this stage. Yeah. Stop reading, because reading is a form of procrastination. You know, people say, but I read 10 articles. I'm like, okay, what is that about? So reading can become a form of procrastination. So yes, you've got to know when to stop.
Okay. All right, let's see what else we have here. Right, that seems to be it. Caroline, just one thing. What keeps you going? I mean, writing a book, it's quite an effort amongst all the other responsibilities and priorities that you have, and guiding students and so on. Yeah, what is keeping you going?
I think the thing that keeps me going is the thrill, I suppose, of achievement and success, and not only my own achievement, but my achievement in helping others. You know, it's become a real thing for me to watch my students have these aha moments where they say, oh my word, you've just made this so much clearer, you know. So I think what kept me going through the book was just hard work and tenacity. I went on a 14-day water fast, believe it or not. So I drank only water for 14 days, ate nothing. And in that time, I gained some serious mental clarity, and I just pulled the rest of the book together. But yeah, it's about just the ongoing, every day, do something. Just don't stop. Engage with your work every day. And even if you need to take a day off, I'm absolutely feel that is what one needs to do. So take those days off, but just engage somewhere, even if it's for 10 minutes, just so that you keep that baby alive and going.
Okay, but if you thank you very much for that. But now, when you stopped drinking water, did you have wine instead, or some coffee, or what?
I had a coffee first and then straight into wine.
Okay, guys, jokes aside. Listen, I think thank you very much, and congratulations on the book. It's critical that our country produces more high-level skills and high-level human capital, so that we can build our nation's level of expertise to a greater extent. Thank you for taking the time and effort. I really admire people who are prepared to plow back to society and to try and work towards a better country and a better environment and community so our country can thrive. And this really adds value to that. So Caroline, thank you very much to all our delegates for the evening. Thank you for joining us and supporting Caroline in all the different aspects. Thank you for those of you who already ordered books. Tina will again circulate the information to you, I'm sure. And to Tina specifically, thank you for organizing this event. Katie for being assisting there as well in terms of being a backup. And then Sia, put on your TV screen quickly there. I thought Sia runs our publishing division, and she's the mother of the publishing division. So Sia, also thanks to you for your contribution in getting the book out. Okay, guys, have a nice evening, and we're looking forward to you. By the way, just for those who are still there, we are going to run, Caroline's going to run a few workshops as well for students who would like to be involved and who would like to get more expertise and skills in completing their thesis. But we'll let you know later on in the year about that. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great evening. Enjoy the book. Please enjoy your studies and keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Bye, everyone.